So I'm Jillian Hudson with Beautiful Forks, and today I'm going to talk about how UX mitigates risk at a company. And helping me today is my friend Hannah Frazier.
Good, good, good. Well, so we're going to talk a little bit. I'm actually really curious about this new topic. And because I guess my basic question is that I've been hearing a lot uh, about um, about mitigating risk or in the context of UX, and I don't know what that means. So maybe you could answer why or how UX is responsible for mitigating risk for companies.
Well, UX isn't solely responsible, but in the context of the product design and development, UX has the best opportunity to mitigate risk by making sure that the project starts off and heads in the right direction. So when we talk about that, we're talking about um, research mostly, UX research. Now, design follows that, but the UX research at the very beginning of the company, at the very beginning of the project, really sets the stage for success for a company. And Al will get into all of the different areas how that impacts the product and how it mitigates the risk. So I have a deck for that. Let me share that with you.
But today we're going to talk about risk, and I will tell you about how good user research mitigates risk for the company. You'll see a lot of companies skip research and expose themselves to mass amounts of risk of failure that can be mitigated by taking the time to do research first. The ship it and see is the most risky thing that you can do. Move Fast and Break Things by Mark Zuckerberg is the dumbest quote any UX researcher has ever heard. It is the antithesis of mitigating risk. By not doing true user research with a trained and experienced UX researcher, you risk a lot of things, and we're going to go into these in depth. So let's first start with assumptions. Without research, there's no way you can know what your users want. I do understand that a lot of product owners are brought up from the user base in some instances, and a lot of times they assume that they can speak for the user, but unless they were the user less than 6 months ago, the chances are that the user experience has changed, the market has changed, the application has changed, and their assumptions that they can speak for the user are no longer valid. So when you make decisions and you move forward with them, then your products don't align with the actual users who are using them today. If you avoid the assumption and you question the assumption, you have the opportunity to get to the heart of the problem that needs fixing. Does that make sense to you, Hannah?
It does. It does.
So financial risks, you don't often think of this when it comes to UX, but a poor user experience can result in lost sales or user abandonment. And there are no exit interviews. When a user leaves your application, the user rarely tells you why they're abandoning it. They just start shopping around for something better. And delighted users don't shop around. It's easier to keep a happy customer than it is to find a new customer. Example I would give for you on this one is right now, I'm experiencing some problems with my Roku player. I have to reboot it often because it's not connecting with my TV, and it's always been kind of glitching. So I'm not looking at new Roku players. I'm looking at what their competitors are doing so that I can see if there's something better out there. I would not be shopping around if my Roku was working as I expected it to. Does that resonate with you, Hannah? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. So basically, the risk of user behavior then is that
Mm-hmm.
rather than call your hotline and say why is this, why is this, why is this, is they
Mm-hmm.
start they start looking around again.
And that's where you get the user abandonment. I will quit buying Roku because it's just not a satisfactory user experience. If I have to reboot it every time I want to watch it, or at random times I have to reboot it. So that's where this sort of risk of financial loss comes in versus retaining customers, loyal customers.
So if I'm hearing this right, or maybe you could explain this a little bit more, does that mean that the UX experience is kind of preemptive, like seeing or maybe
recognizing a problem or a user experience as it happens or before it becomes that problem?
Well, UX problems and tech problems are kind of intermeshed. I mean, it's sort of a spectrum. There are some UX problems that make the product completely unusable. And then there are some that are just annoying, and it's kind of like a death by a thousand cuts kind of thing. It's how long are you willing to be annoyed by them before you are willing to give up on that product and move somewhere else? And how severe is the annoyance? So it's not something that you can say is, it's going to be different for everyone. What is their annoyance? Some people, it would be a deal killer right now if they had to reboot their Roku, like every other day or something like that. And some people are willing to put up with it as long as the thing works out once they reboot it. And some people are somewhere in the middle. It's just, everybody's tolerance level is different, but no one is delighted. We talk about delighted users all the time. Nobody's delighted by this. And that's where you really want to be.
Got it. Thank you.
So legal and accessibility issues, this is sort of like under the radar, but a really big deal. Proper research includes understanding the needs of all the users, even those with disabilities. It could be colorblindness, low vision, be anything. Neglecting this can lead to legal repercussions. I do have experience in one of my previous jobs where the product team was building a map with different color coding. And when I finally saw the map, it was pretty late in development. And what I told them is that for people with the red-green color blindness issue, these colors would be skewed and muddy. Red skews into brown for them. So basically, you're just giving them varying shades of mud. And it's not going to read the way they intended. It's not going to be useful. And it's going to impact the way they're using the product. And that is where you run into a legal liability issue. I told them that they would need to change the color coding to match the WAG 2.0 compliancy standards. And the message got all garbled. And then later that day, I got an email from the VP of sales asking me why I said our map had to have our branding colors on it or we would get sued, which is not what I said at all. But this is the game of telephone within big corporations. And I explained to him that while we might not ever get sued because of this, we were putting ourselves at liability risk by doing this. Especially because it was external to the company, customers could sue. And that I sent him a link, showed him how accessibility issues are becoming more and more legal issues for companies. And it's just not worth shooting yourself in the foot. You could change a color palette to make it more accessible. There are all sorts of resources and tools. If you build a leading accessible application in your field, you are giving yourself a competitive edge and a very loyal set of followers. We just talked about delighted users and people who are dealing with annoyances by a thousand cuts. How do you think those people with vision problems feel when they see something that's crisp, clear, and easy for them to use, and your competitor's stuff is all muddy and creating ambiguity for them? This is a case where you will have a very loyal set of users of your product if they feel like you are paying attention to their accessibility issues.
Got it. Thank you. And so then I'm hearing the risks and the level then to which that risk can be elevated to. It's like if it becomes a legal risk, then yes, anybody will start paying attention to that because they have to count that in.
All right, let's move on to excessive development costs. There's a saying, everybody's heard it, if you don't do it right the first time, how are you going to find time to do it over? And that is what development costs are doing to you. If you just make it and ship it like we talked about and it fails, then post-launch, you're going to have to readdress those things by doing proper design, proper research, and then you have double development costs. You have to develop it twice, you have to QA it twice. You've done everything twice because you didn't have the clear insights from the UX research team. You also run the risk of, without proper research, spending time on features that your users haven't necessarily asked for. We're seeing a lot of this with AI right now. Everybody wants an AI feature. It is a solution in search of a problem, but is that really what your users are asking for? What do they need? They might need something fixed. They might need an existing feature altered in some way that improves their workflows. They may or may not need an accessibility. They may not need, an AI tool. We won't know until we do the research with them. But if you do it right and you develop it right the first time, you're going to have happier customers who haven't had that negative experience of that failed launch. And you're going to have a more productive development team who is developing new features for you as opposed to reworking features that failed. That is the trade-off there. These are obvious costs, but there are some indirect costs that we'll get into in a moment. Hannah, do you have any questions about this?
No, I think it makes good sense about again, it's like I'm just trying to understand here real quick, but it seems like you're giving a lot more information so that the development team or that the company can make informed decisions and not be guessing.
Yeah, exactly. So the often hidden costs are increased support costs. This is where you get a massive customer support overhead, and you've got a lot of frustrated customers. I talked about earlier about if the product didn't work at all, I would have to call customer support, get them to do it, get them to fix it, get some help with it. If it's a death by a thousand cuts annoyance and everything, I'm not going to call them. But here, you're going to have massive overhead from having to have a large customer support team in order to handle the calls that are coming in from a poor user release. People don't often, or companies I should say, don't often look at this as an expense that's related to user experience or that could be mitigated by the risk that could be mitigated by research, but it really is. I have talked to a lot of companies, I've worked with a lot of companies, and a lot of times, customer support doesn't just hold their hand. A lot of times, I've seen customer support just do the thing for them that they were unable to do for themselves, which again puts customer support in a place of actually using the product for them because it's not user-friendly and doesn't fix the problem of making it so that the customer can do it themselves, which means that every time they need this thing done, what are they going to do? They're going to call customer support. So there are a lot of indirect costs, not just the development rework costs, but customer support and so on, that will be costs that the company will have to face rather than just fixing the experience so that the user is both satisfied and can do it themselves. So if you want a huge customer service headcount, don't do research. If you want less customer service headcount proportionally for the size of your company, you're going to need to invest in research. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
So diminished brand reputation. When you release something that has poor usability or poor experience, you develop a bad reputation amongst your users and potential users. And it puts your business in jeopardy. If you're attached to a poor product, let's talk about Boeing for a moment. Who wants to get on a Boeing plane right now? I realize this may not stand up in 10 years time, this video, but I don't want to get on a plane where the door is going to pop off, where the landing gear is going to fall off. That is diminished brand reputation right there, because they have been cutting corners and not doing what they need to do. Now, obviously, this isn't a research example, but it's still a case of a diminished brand reputation in the user's eye. You're always working against your competitors. So if your competitor is constantly advancing their software or their application or their website or whatever, and you're making missteps in your application and so forth, you run into problems there, because if you're trying to keep up with your competitor, you see what they've released that works well, you try and match it. While you're trying to match it, they're leapfrogging ahead of you. So they're always going to be in advance. If you can do research and do it properly, you can flip that. you can actually leapfrog ahead of your customer. And you do that by doing research, finding out what your users want that isn't on anybody else's roadmap because you're doing the research. You can even be really sneaky and research with your competitors' users and find out how their product is falling down and make sure you incorporate those features and advancements in your app. Suddenly, you are miles ahead of your competitor instead of them being miles ahead in front of you. So this is where you don't have to compete on price. If you have the superior user experience and you're solving things for not only your customers, but their customers, you are competing on experience. You don't have to lower your prices. The cost of annoyance is worth something for your users and for your customers. They're going to pay for the experience.
Right. Well, what occurred to me as you were saying that is really the ability to have the information to think down, like for things that are certainly happening right now, but also down the road. What's coming next? What's the next opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like or recognizing user or customer needs before they change into complaints. Before they maybe even the customer knows that.
Mm-hmm. And that dovetails right into missed opportunities. And I alluded to this, this trying to play catch up with your competitor. User research can uncover needs that weren't initially evident. User research does three things that I've noticed that businesses really appreciate. One, we validate things that they currently thought were true. And that is not the role of research. That is also called confirmation bias. But the second and third thing make up for that. The second is we validate things that they thought might be true but didn't have any evidence of. And the third thing is the most important thing, and that is that we uncover things that they didn't know that they didn't know. And by validating the first one and proving the second one, we get more opportunity to improve things by the third one. The things that we didn't know, now all of a sudden we know them. We can build a roadmap that redesigns our product and our strategy towards the product and everything to fix those missing opportunities, those things that we missed, that the users are telling us in research. That is the whole ball game right there. And by doing this thorough research, you can create a clear roadmap to the most strategic and innovative product that you can create. And it doesn't have to be bells and whistles. The wow is in the eye of the user. It's not in the eye of the business. It's not in the eye of the shareholder. Sorry. It's in the eye of the user. And if you wow the user with something that fixes all their needs in this area, that's the whole ballgame. That's where they're going to keep buying your product. They're going to keep using your product. They're going to evangelize your product and your brand. That is it.
Oh, it sounds great. I'll buy one. No. So then, yeah. So what's next there? What's it's like the missed opportunity. I mean, like it all sounds fantastic. What's what follows on that?
Okay. Well, the last risk that we have is reduced ROI, and we've kind of alluded to this before. We talk about ROI as is the money that we're willing to invest and what we're going to get from that investment. And we only talk about it in most companies in terms of how is it going to increase our sales? How is it going to get us more customers? You'd risk reducing ROI by those things that are costing us extra money. If you reduce development and you reduce customer service, and you can increase customer retention just by doing research and following the advice of the research that you get, you do get a return on investment, but it often doesn't look the same as more sales and more customers. It looks like keeping customers. So you have to know that it looks a little bit different but it is just as valid as getting new customers. As I said, it's easier to keep a customer than it is to go out and find a new one. So reduced ROI is a risk, and it's something that can be mitigated with research. And those are all of the risks that I have to talk to you about today. Well, I just want to recap for you. We talked about a lot of risk, and I told you about the opportunities that were sort of the opposite of the risk. So to go back to our original slide, move fast and break things. So don't be like Mark Zuckerberg. Don't do that. If you do the true user research, you can get to the heart of the problem that needs fixing. You can retain customers. You can build the leading accessible application that gives you a competitive edge and a loyal set of customers and followers. You develop it right the first time, you're going to have happier customers and a more productive development team. You'll have a right-sized customer service headcount for a good user experience. You're competing on experience instead of cost, and your competitors will be following your example instead of you trying to do that. You'll have a clear roadmap to most strategic and innovative products you can create, and you're going to increase your ROI in both direct and indirect ways. So that is what you can do with the power of user research.
It's fabulous. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So now that you've seen the deck, Hannah, and we've talked about all the different ways that UX mitigates risk, do you have any questions for me?
Okay, so digesting here a little bit, but I guess I do have some questions. In the context of how companies work or so, there's often been, it's like the conversation about, of course, AI, and so can you kind of give a counterpoint? It's like, how does AI mitigate risk?
Well, AI doesn't mitigate risk today. That's part of the problem. And we will do a much bigger topic on AI, but for now, I just want to say that in context of where we are today in 2024, AI is producing hallucinations, it's giving bad advice, it requires a lot of extra work on the part of human beings to validate that it's not giving us bad information. So in that sense, it doesn't qualify to my understanding of how UX mitigates risk. It does not mitigate risk. It creates more risk. So again, I'll talk a lot more on it. I believe that AI is a constantly shifting topic, but for now, I would say it increases risk to a company for all the reasons that we talked about how UX mitigates risk.
Okay. Should people still consult AI then? Is that a factor, or?
What I would like to, what I don't see it as being productive at this point, because you have to do so much work to validate that it's working. It would be like having an intern that you had to go behind it and do all of its work over again. What's the point of having an intern at that point? Any other questions?
Sure. Yeah, I do have more questions or so. I've heard, the term democratization of UX, and don't know what that means. How does that impact risk?
Actually, that's another topic that doesn't mitigate risk. The democratization of UX is basically the concept, and trust me, this did not come from a UX person, that anybody can do UX. Anybody can design. Anybody can do research. And everybody should design and everybody should do research. And what that does is it means that you have a lot of untrained and inexperienced people doing the work of UX. They don't have the training. They don't know how to mitigate bias. They don't have the experience to understand all the pitfalls and sheer cliff faces that they could run down in doing this. So again, this is another topic that we'll spend a lot of time on, but for now I just want to say that having untrained and inexperienced people actually increases risk to the company. They don't know all the things about accessibility that I know. They don't know all the things about the indirect costs of all the excess things, all the things that we just talked about. They just don't know about that. And they don't know how to course correct when those things happen. This is something that comes with training and experiences. So, no, the democratization of UX is actually a huge problem right now. It hurts companies in the long run, even though there's sort of a short-term gain of not having to pay for UX people. In the long run, it will hurt the product, it will hurt the users, and eventually it will hurt the company. So thank you for that. That's all the time we have for questions right now. So I want to thank you so much, Hannah, for helping me out with the recording. And I want to remind people that UX Consulting is available for research services, and I also do train companies in how to do UX strategy and the company UX teams. And then I'm also available for coaching on ADP List. So check out any of our other videos. We will be bringing topics soon on UX strategy, on mitigating risk of AI, on the democratization of UX. And then I also have another topic coming up soon about user delight. So check those out.